يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2020.
Good afternoon. You are watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lina Tamim, and these are today's headlines. Police in Australia are continuing to surround a cafe in downtown Sydney, where a lone gunman is holding several people hostage. Relatives of the 25 captive servicemen burned tires outside the Grand Sarai in downtown Beirut after some families received phone calls from the captors threatening to kill a hostage. And the Ministries of Health, Economy and Agriculture hold a joint press conference in which they declared fixing the price of 1 litre of milk at 1,100 Lebanese pounds. Police in Australia are continuing to surround a cafe in downtown Sydney where a lone gunman is holding several people hostage. Authorities say negotiations are on with the hostage taker, but as night fell over Sydney, there was no resolution in sight to the crisis, which began earlier today. As the siege entered its 12th hour, basic questions remained unanswered. Police refused to say how many hostages were inside the cafe and what they believed the gunman's motives might be. 5 people were seen to be rushing out of the cafe, but the police did not say whether they escaped or were released. Earlier, 2 people inside the cafe were seen holding up a flag with an Islamic declaration of faith that has often been used by armed groups. Australia's Prime Minister Tony Abbott said the incident was very disturbing. He said the gunman had claimed a political motivation, but he stopped short of making any reference to concerns of terror plot. In a similar incident, Belgian police have detained 3 men after they took a hostage in an apartment building in the western city of Ghent. Reports say the hostage was released unharmed. It was still unclear why the men had taken the hostage, but federal police said it was not an act of terror. 4 armed men had been reported entering the apartment block early this morning in the working-class neighborhood, prompting police to set up a big security operation to keep bystanders away. After several hours, at least 2 men left the building with their hands up. It was unclear how the 3rd man came out or whether police were still looking for more suspects. And now for some news in Lebanon. Relatives of the 25 captive servicemen have burned tires outside the Grand Sarai in downtown Beirut after some families received phone calls from the captors threatening to kill a hostage. Families told media they had received calls from the abductors pledging to kill a captive within 48 hours unless the government responds to their demands. The kidnappers reportedly issued the threats after they received reports that the state had told the families it will not negotiate and the captives should be regarded as martyrs. But Health Minister Wael Abu Fahoud denied the claim, saying he had no knowledge of such a government decision. The jihadists, who have already killed 4 hostages since abducting more than 30 in August, have been calling on the government to release the wives of ISIS leaders recently detained in Lebanon. The Ministries of Health, Economy and Agriculture have held a joint press conference in which they declared fixing the price of 1 litre of milk at 1,100 Lebanese pounds after dropping for a week to 500 Lebanese pounds. Health Minister Wael Abu Fahoud made the announcement, reiterating warnings for the owners of dairy factories that the state will not yield to their extortion, adding he will take the necessary legal measures against them. The farmers recently said during protests that the closure of Lebanese factories in the Bekaa was the main reason behind the drop in prices, dumping milk on the roads. Agriculture Minister Akram Shahayib said the food safety campaign will go on, stressing that his ministry is the sole authority responsible for determining the price of a litre of milk. For his party, Economy Minister Ala Hakim told reporters that his ministry is setting the necessary qualifications in cooperation with the competent ministries, and those measures will be implemented. Prime Minister Tamam Slam has praised the Health Ministry's revolutionary food safety campaign, but called for a long-term solution to ensure that the efforts do not fizzle out over time. Salam also hailed Agriculture Minister Akram Shahayib's performance in the food safety campaign. Salam's comments came during a news conference at the Agricultural Ministry. The Lebanese army has foiled an infiltration attempt overnight when some gunmen tried to infiltrate the outskirts of Ras Balbik and Wadi Rafah near Al-Qa. The national news agency says the troops engaged in heavy armed clashes with the infiltrators. Reports have raised fears lately that Syrian armed gunmen were planning to open a front in Lebanon by invading the northeastern border town of Arsal and advancing into Al-Qa, Das Baalbek, and other nearby villages. Reports say the Al-Qaeda affiliate Nusra Front, the Islamic State of Iraq, and the Levant and the Free Syrian Army have been entrenched for the past 2 months and a half on the mountains overseeing the Lebanese Bekaa on the poor Syrian-Lebanese border. MP Walid Jumblat has blamed the culture minister and the governor of Beirut for the ongoing demolition of the historic Art Deco building in Jumaisi. Jumaisi residents woke up Friday to the sound of the historic building being torn down. The building still stands but is being dismantled bit by bit. The building, which has been empty for several years, boasts a number of distinctive features, including stylized wrought iron balcony railings and bay windows. Culture Minister Raymond Hareji had said he tried to save it by freezing the demolition request, but overruled by the Shura Council, a body that checks the legality of administrative decisions and whose decision is final. Jumblat called for immediate action to stop these projects before drowning Beirut in more systematic distortion. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja has kicked off a visit to Saudi Arabia by meeting with Deputy Crown Prince Mukrin bin Abdulaziz. The two officials discussed the political developments in the region, including the need for the election of a new president in Lebanon. The Saudi prince stressed that the kingdom always stands by Lebanon and will continue to do so by backing any steps it takes to bolster the stability, sovereignty, and security of its people. For his part, Jaja thanked the Deputy Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia for the grants to the Lebanese army to help it confront the threat of terrorism and all other dangers facing the country. Jaja and Prince Mukrin also addressed regional developments in Iraq, Syria, and Palestine. The Syrian army has lost control of 2 strategic bases in northwestern provinces of Idlib to coordinated assaults by Al-Qaeda and other Islamist groups. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says a Nusra Front and Al-Qaeda affiliate, in coordination with Islamist rebels and Al-Jun al-Aqsa, Ahram al-Sham, seized Hamadiyeh and Wadi al-Daif bases, the biggest regime positions in Idlib. The Nusra Front initially reported a lightning victory in Wadi Daif, putting large swaths of Idlib province, which borders Turkey, under jihadist control. The takeover was a show of force for the Al-Qaeda branch, which in November drove mainstream rebels seeking President Bashar al-Assad's ouster from Idlib province. Mainstream opposition fighters had been fighting for Wadi al-Daif and Hamadiyeh for around 2 years, but despite repeated attempts, failed to capture it from government troops. And coming up next, South Africa's Rolene Strauss is crowned Miss World 2014. That and more. Welcome back. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will tell U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry that Israel will rebuff any moves at the United Nations to set a time frame for withdrawal from territory Palestinians seek for a state. Kerry is due to meet with Netanyahu in Rome to discuss various proposals for a Palestinian state that are circulating at the United Nations. Later today, Kerry will travel to Paris for talks with European counterparts and then on to London to meet Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat and a delegation from the Arab League, who will urge the United States not to use its UN Secretary Council veto to block the proposals. The hastily arranged meeting suggested urgency in America's drive to manage efforts among Security Council members to draft a new proposal before Israeli elections in March. Kerry said on Friday he wanted to diffuse tensions during the talks. The US and EU have criticized Turkey over the police crackdowns and more than 24 detentions targeting 2 opposition media outlets. Istanbul police raided the country's most read newspaper on Sunday, as well as a national television close to Fethullah Gulen, an influential US-based religious leader and a former government ally, and detained 27 people, including top executives of the outlets in question. Various materials, including hard drives, were seized following the police search at Zaman newspaper and Saman Yolu TV buildings. A police chief is also among the ones detained. Semi-officials Anatolia news agency reported that 4 detainees who worked for Saman Yolu TV were released after questioning. In a press briefing on Sunday, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki called on Turkish authorities to protect media freedom and other democratic values. Yemeni security forces shot dead a prominent leader in the southern separatist Hirak movement in Aden Mond. Residents said, ratcheting up tensions in the city where residents have been observing a weekly protest to push for independence. Rising demands for their separation by southern separatists have been one of several challenges facing President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi since he took office 3 years ago after mass protests forced his predecessor Ali Abdullah Saleh to step down. Hirak activists said soldiers from the paramilitary National Security Forces shot and killed Khalid al-Junaidi when a group of soldiers blocked his path while he was driving in the southern port city of Aden. Police said he was hit when security forces fired to disperse a demonstration in the city. Junaidi, in his 30s, had recently been freed after months of detention for his role as the Hirak leader. South Africa's Relien Strauss has been named the winner of the Miss World 2014 competition in the London finale, televised in many parts of the world. The 22-year-old fourth-year medical student said she was looking forward to her year as Miss World. Passionate about education and medicine, Strauss says she was lucky to grow up in multicultural South Africa and hopes to use the lessons she's learned to help lead the Miss World organization.
It's an amazing experience. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me, and I can't wait to represent my country, but also be a beacon of hope to the rest of the world and build on Mrs. Julia Morley's legacy that, anything is possible if we stand together united as one. I really get goosebumps every time I hear the word South Africa. I've had so many opportunities in my own country, and with Mr. Nelson Mandela, what he's done to our country, we can really be an example for the rest of the world that we can unite, we can forgive, we can look at our futures and see a brighter future.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Police in Australia are continuing to surround a cafe in downtown Sydney where a lone gunman is holding several people hostage. Relatives of the 25 captive servicemen burned tires outside the Grand Sarai in downtown Beirut after some families received phone calls from the captors threatening to kill a hostage. And the Ministries of Health, Economy and Agriculture hold a joint press conference in which they declared fixing the price of a litre of milk at 1,100 Lebanese pounds. Those are your Monday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice week ahead.
يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2020.